And welcome to another episode of the Disrupting Podcast. My name's Dana Donovic. I'm here with Alex. Today we are so lucky to have the BDP Big Data Protocol founding team. Guys, how are you?
Doing great, Dana. Good to be here.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, we're excited to do a deep dive on Big Data Protocol, learn everything about what you're up to and what to expect here in the near future. So, to kickstart everything, in the simplest terms, help us understand what is Big Data Protocol.
Yeah, good question. We're going to keep it really simple for folks out there who are not really familiar with crypto or with Ethereum or decentralized finance. We're going to try to keep the jargon to a minimum, but I will throw out a few words, and we'll try to define them as we go.
Perfect.
Yeah, in the simplest terms, Big Data Protocol is a Web3 data marketplace where you can access and trade commercially valuable data sets. And Web3 is just a way of describing the decentralized web, meaning things that use cryptography to secure the protocol as opposed to any other sort of regular computer network.
That's pretty nice and simple and short and sweet. I like it. I like the way that it covered the overview because a lot of people want to know, like, what are you? And that was perfect. So who are all you guys? What are your backgrounds overall?
Yeah, I'm going to be really quick. So my background is as a corporate lawyer. I practiced for over 5 years at a law firm in New York City. And before that, I went to Dartmouth and Chicago for law school. And I got into crypto in 2017. When I first got into the industry, I really just knew nothing, right? I didn't know what Ethereum was. I didn't know how to set up a wallet. But once you get into this industry, it's just like you just learn so fast. Every month is like a so I became a crypto investor, I became an advisor, and I started my own investment group called Building Block Group. And our returns since inception in 2017 are about 180x. So, I mean, like, crypto has been very good to me.
Yeah, I'll say so.
Wow.
That is the epitome of just return.
That's insane, man. That's great. Congratulations.
Thank you. And it wasn't like from being, it wasn't like I started in 2013 and bought Bitcoin at $10. It was a lot of alpha generation.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not gonna like pretend to be some investment guru, and that's not why we're here.
Sure.
But probably the best investment tip I would give is like try to be contrarian. Mm-hmm. And by definition, that's not something that most people can do. What that really means is like being early to things when other people are not talking about it, when it's not in the news, and also getting out when the hype is kind of overblown and it's just there's just too much. Like even in 2019, me going around telling people like, hey, I'm a crypto investor, they're looking at me like I'm an idiot, like 2019, Bitcoin's down, there's nothing happening. You have to be willing to look like a weirdo or an idiot to
Well, you seem to embrace it really well.
Well, I mean, now it's cool, right? Now we're being interviewed. Now it's a cool thing again.
Yeah.
But how you get the returns is by being in it when it's not cool.
Well, that's great, Peter. Mark, what's your background?
Well, I wish I was Peter's best friend back when he was doing 180.
All of us do.
No, unfortunately, I came more from like the traditional capital market space. So I started an intern, large systematic fund back in 2012. during that time, obviously the primary information analysts were using for investment research came from things like SEC filings, financial statements, anything really derived from a Bloomberg terminal. And so one of my close friends who's actually now one of the co-founders of Big Data Protocol, Jordan and I, as a nights and weekend project, we started scraping email inboxes for receipt data, right? So you make a purchase on Amazon, we knew the total cost of sale, what specific products you were buying, from which brands. And, with a large enough panel, we could accurately predict what earnings would be for online retailers like Amazon, Best Buy, or what subscription activity would be for companies like Netflix and Spotify. And we did this in an anonymized, compliant way, just to make sure.
Of course.
So obviously, that was very lucrative to hedge funds once we started monetizing that type of data. So we extended it into more esoteric categories, started Amassed Insights, which is an alternative data technology company that operates one of the largest alternative data platforms in the market as today. And yeah, that's kind of the quick 50,000 foot overview.
Well, I guess my next question is, how did the two of you guys get together? How did BDP form? Is there a backstory to the genesis of everything?
Yeah, so you can think about BDP as big data plus decentralized finance. And decentralized finance, or DeFi, is another one of these jargon words that I'll just throw out. What it is lending, borrowing, derivatives, all on the blockchain.
Yep.
And really saw the rise of decentralized finance last summer. And what I saw was that it was really good at getting liquidity to a bunch of tokens, but it was driven by meme tokens, right? So if the meme token of today is Dogecoin or Shiba coin, the meme coin of last summer for DeFi was food coins. So literally there were coins like Yam and like Potato Coin that would, that was what was hot last summer. And they're very liquid. And there's no real value to these meme tokens. So I
weren't getting 180x returns on those?
Some people did, for sure.
Sure.
So I guess there is a value in that. But I was thinking, man, let's bring liquidity to something that's actually valuable, and that's illiquid, which is big data. And I know Mark, I know Jordan, they are pioneers in this field of big data, in the field of alternative data. So that was a natural, it was natural for me to call them up and make this happen.
And how long ago did you guys start?
So we started last year, basically, last summer, last fall.
Yeah.
That's when we started, ideating and start validating the market.
So when the store, like you said, you guys kind of looked at the overall market, the crypto market, and you saw all these tokens, and really there really is no use for them. And you thought that you'd be able to actually make some kind of change in the crypto market and have something that could be utilized for people to actually invest into, and that can actually be usable in the future.
That's right. It's about getting utility for something, right?
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, there's not a lot of utility to a liquid coin like Yam. But if you look at the value of data, Mark, you can talk more about this, but the saying is that data is the new oil, right?
Yes.
Look at all these companies, Facebook, Amazon, Apple, a lot of these, if you look at Facebook and Robinhood, they don't charge fees, right? They don't have like a product. At least Apple has an iPhone that you pay money for, but Facebook, no one pays anything for. Robinhood doesn't have any fees. So it's like, how do they make money? Well, they're really just data companies, and they trade in data. and they're super valuable. So if we could make data a new asset class, then that's super powerful.
Question: data is worth more than gold, worth more than oil, especially in the digital market we are in, and that's brilliant. That's exactly what I want to hear. So obviously we've heard the way that BDP was created, and I love the story. I love the way that everything's been put on. And does Big Data Protocol have its own token as well? We've talked about YAM, we talked about all those, and kind of like tell us about how you launched your token.
Yeah, so we have our own token. It's the symbol is BDP, and we went about it in a completely different way than than probably most projects out there. And we did what's called a fair launch, which basically means giving away coins for free to anyone who comes, which is kind of a counterintuitive concept, because how can, how do you value something that you get for free?
Yeah.
And we had investors coming to us saying, like, hey, we want to invest in your project. How do we get your tokens? And we turned them down, and we said, hey, we want to give everybody an equal chance to get these tokens for free. And actually, that turned out to be a really good decision, right? Because we had a spectacular launch. We had over $6.5 billion, so that's with a B, $1 billion staked in our protocol within the first 48 hours. And that was unbelievable.
Wow.
That method too that you talked about of giving away, is that common practice in ICOs that you've seen?
Yeah, so it's not common at all. It's extremely because people are just trying to raise money, right? And if you give away coins for free, you raise $0.
Yeah.
So, but the advantage of doing it this way is, first you bootstrap a very big community. Because if you're trying to sell your token, inevitably, you reach fewer people. And here, by giving it away for free, we had a huge number of holders. We were also able to get global reach. If you're just doing a sale of a token, you're inevitably going to target, let's say, English speakers if you're a Western project. And if you're from, Asia, you're inevitably going to target, Chinese speakers or what have you.
Sure.
But here, anybody could come and join, and people did join from all over the world. So you just can't get that without doing something like a fair launch. So the response was pretty hard to believe.
Yeah.
And we have so many crazy stories. Like, a Chinese billionaire called me up the day after our launch, and he said, hey, I put in $1.1 billion into your protocol.
Whoa.
And, here's my wallet. You can see that $1.1 billion is now in. Can you set up a new what's called a new pool, a new liquidity pool, so that I can put in another $1 billion? And we're like, oh my God, this is insane.
Yeah.
But we actually had to turn them down because, the great thing about the blockchain is that you can't change the rules of the game once you've launched. So you can't go and do anybody a special favor. Once you say what the rules are, everyone's got to follow them.
Yeah, set in stone there. Well, so why do you guys focus on data? What problems are you solving with what you're doing here?
Yeah, so we talked about the size of the market, the market opportunity, basically that all these huge companies are really just data companies. And the funny thing about data is that even though it's digital, it's actually very illiquid. Mm-hmm. And data just tends to sit in silos. It's very hard to transfer and buy and sell.
Yeah.
And that makes it very illiquid, and it's hard to get price discovery because you don't know, how much you should be paying. Mm-hmm. It's very opaque. So then that makes transactions very difficult. So we want to bring liquidity to data. We want price discovery for data. And that way, I think we're going to build a very valuable platform, because we're going to have a place where companies can access and trade valuable data. And Mark will speak more to just how the data acquisition process works and how paying. But
really quick too, who interprets the data? You know, it exists in these silos, but who interprets it? Who makes sense of, you know, all this data? I mean, it sounds overwhelming. It sounds like a lot of mental fatigue.
It is. I mean, you know, I think there's a stat out there, and I don't know where it came from, but you might need to fact check me after this. But 90% of the world's data was created in the last 2 years. Only 0.5% is actually being analyzed in any form. So right now, you know, I think coming from a mass, right? So we had systematically sourced and validated over 16,000 different unique data sets that are right now used by institutional investors. Like Peter mentioned, like the process is broken. You know, there's a very legacy way of acquiring data. And just to provide you guys context, you know, typically for a fund to onboard a brand new data provider, it can take anywhere between 6 to 18 months.
Oh, wow.
The data set. And unfortunately too, there's a lot of middlemen in the process. You know, there's data brokers who take these large, you know, transaction fees. You know, sometimes you have to go through an investment bank or a prime broker. There's just a lot of friction, right? And so, you know, our thought process was to, one, you know, instead of only having this to a select group of institutional funds, let's actually open this up to anybody. It can be a retail trader to access the same level of information. But two, like, let's make the data acquisition process, you know, near instantaneous. And we can embed a lot of these, you know, kind of contract terms and onboarding steps into the blockchain. And it's a really compelling thing when you can acquire this type of data. It's very unique in an instantaneous way.
Nice. And that's, you kind of get, like, everyone that's listening, like, you're kind of painting the picture of what Big Data Protocol is. Can you tell us, like, what's the grand vision of BDP?
Yeah, I think the vision is to, our vision for the future is that of data as a new asset class. So if you look at Coinbase back in 2012, they were trying to raise money. Nobody was interested in them. And they were talking about crypto as a new asset class. And you know, at that time, you know, no one saw it as an asset class.
Sure. Yeah.
In an asset, right? They just said, oh, this is a, you know, crypto, Bitcoin seems kind of like a scam, seems, you know, it's just for the dark net. And their vision, their thesis was, hey, crypto is not just Bitcoin, it's not just a scam, it's actually an asset, and all crypto assets are going to be a new asset class. And we've really seen that happen this year with a ton of institutional adoption and even adoption by El Salvador recently. So what we see, our thesis here is that data is going to be a new asset class that's going to be tokenized and traded and accessible on platforms like BDP. And I think I think one difference between us and kind of having to convince people that crypto is an asset class is that everyone already kind of agrees that big data is valuable.
Sure.
So we've gotten, you know, that's one less hurdle that we have to cross and get across.
Yeah, and kind of like the writing was on the wall, especially last year throughout COVID. It kind of pushed it over its edge. The fact that there was so much money that was being printed, not only in the United States, but across the whole globe. So to be able to see the utilization and the importance of cryptocurrency, the fact that you can truly control the amount of coins and tokens that are being distributed to the people in your market, and the way that it's like decentralized, and it's for not only one single country, but for everyone, that created a huge amount of value. So I like the fact that you correlate the token, the crypto token, to data, because like you said, data is worth more than oil, worth more than gold. Countries in the future, it's not going to be how much money you have, it's how much data do you have that's going to truly give you power. So there's huge value in that. So I do agree with everything that you just stated.
Well, and can you guys speak to more, what kind of data specifically, alternative data, and who's using it?
Yeah, so I would say our strategy right now is to, think Amazon, right? They didn't start by selling every single product under the sun.
Sure.
Like, they started by selling books. So with a very, very small niche, and they expanded from there. And that's our strategy as well. So our niche right now is what's called alternative data. And Mark is going to explain more about that. And that's where like Mark and Jordan's expertise lie. But eventually we'd like to expand to all categories of data and other digital assets. So I'll let you take it away about alternative data and what kind of data is in our market right now.
Yeah, I'm going to try to keep myself under control because I can nerd out on this all day. But I'll give you guys a few examples that will be helpful, and then we can go into who uses that. So I gave you an example earlier, the email receipt data that we were pulling, kind of confirmation receipts that were in people's personal inboxes in a compliant way. That was selling anywhere between 150,000 a year to $1 million per fund. Other kind of examples, we use satellite imagery data to predict crop yields or even oil storage levels. We look into geolocation data. So the purpose there is to see where people are shopping in near real time. We take in debit and credit card transactional information to match purchases with publicly traded companies. On the amass side, we've identified over 139 different data categories, and those are just a few examples. So we're going to incorporate those into BDP. But instead, instead of just having, so when we first started amass, there was probably only around 5 to 6 systematic managers that had deep internal data science teams that actually could process and make sense of all this information. I think in the last 5 years, that's extended to probably a few hundred that are now adopting, quote unquote, alternative data. And we're actually seeing a lot of fundamental investors become more, I think the term is quantamental, right? And they're, slowly getting data engineers in-house to start leveraging this type of data. So instead of just, go ahead.
Yeah, would you say that, would you describe a lot of this data as just, it's behavioral, right? All of this data is behavioral in some facet?
Yeah, like if you look at data acquisition or the underlying source of where we're taking this, right, it goes back to the quantified self. So like the proliferation of low-cost smart devices that are tracking your steps and movements and location, to the semantic web. Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
A lot of data points derived from the watch that you're wearing. Things like the semantic web, satellite imagery, applying NLP and text analysis online. There's just so many different ways that you can acquire data. So yeah, like it is derived from what you say, kind of like the quantified self. And that's only going to explode even more over time. But we want to be at the very top of that funnel of being the first to source, to be the first to validate, and to bring to market the largest, cohort of data sets in the blockchain space.
Wow. There's a huge demand for that. And we already see, like you said, the way that Facebook does it, the way that brokerages do that, there is a huge value for that. So that's exactly what, yeah, I could see this, definitely. So with all this data, with the way that big data protocol is kind of set up, like, can you give us like a deep dive in the functionality and features that big data protocol provides?
Yeah, so so our data market is live right now. We've got a functional platform, and it's not just what you would think of.
Peter, hold on. Is it on just Big Data Protocol? Where is it? The marketplace.
bigdataprotocol.com, and then you can click on the data market tab.
Okay.
So
Well, yeah. So what are some of the features and functionality of the marketplace?
yeah, so normally when you think of a marketplace, you think Amazon, you go on there, you
Yeah.
see products, you see prices, and then you buy. And I guess if you were a seller, you could sell the products too. So we have that functionality on our platform. So people can pay money to acquire a data set. So that functionality is pretty basic. But I think what's really interesting are the two other functions that we've got. One is trading of data tokens, and the second is staking liquidity to data tokens. So trade means people can actually buy and sell data sets, which are tokenized. So I've been calling it a data token. So people can buy and sell that, and that results in price discovery of what the market thinks is the value of that particular data set. So that's really interesting because it allows for price discovery. Because we don't set that price, right? We let the market set that price. Another thing is people are able to stake liquidity. And what that means is if you believe that a particular data set is valuable, you can actually gain some of the transactional fees by adding liquidity to that data set. So I don't want to get in, I don't want to make it too technical, but it's as if you see a hot reseller on Amazon and you think that those products are really going to take off.
Yeah.
You're able to get a cut of those transactional fees. So
you're kind of betting on it in a sense.
In a sense, you're saying, hey, I think this is going to be valuable. I think there's going to be a lot of volume around this data set. So I'm going to stake some liquidity to it and get a cut of those fees.
Wow.
But the important thing on that, though, is like the valuation process is determined by the community. Right now, in the alternative data space, it's determined by brokers, right? So if hedge fund XYZ comes to a person like me or a data broker and says, hey, I'm really like, here's my investment thesis. I'm trying to solve for, I want to understand manufacturing parts coming in and out of China. Can you recommend like 3 to 4 data sets that would satisfy like this thesis? They're going to optimize around which data providers they have the best commercial arrangements for. And then based on the fund size, like that's going to determine price. That's a broken process. And so we're allowing our community to be the determinant of that valuation process.
Wow, that's great. Can you guys talk about, your strategy for achieving, this grand vision you've already articulated here, and, what are some of the challenges that you're facing?
Yeah, great question. I think with any market, you have a two-sided market problem, right? Which is basically the chicken and egg problem. How do you have buyers without sellers, and how do you have sellers without buyers, right? You kind of need both at the same time.
Sure.
So, I mean, think Airbnb, right? When they first got started, why would anybody use it if you were a traveler, why would you use Airbnb if there's no homes listed on the site? And if you've got a home, why would you list it on Airbnb if they don't have any users who are going to come to your home? So it's a tough problem to crack for any market. So the real solution to that is to focus on one side of the market at a time. So right now we're focused on the supply side. And that's just like what Airbnb did. Airbnb went out and said, okay, we are going to really focus on the hosts. We're gonna go out and I mean, they did crazy stuff. Like they went out individually to people on the street and said, hey, can we list your home on our website? And of course, people said no. And then people were saying, oh, I've listed my home, but I'm not getting a lot of traction because my photos look like crap. And the founders of Airbnb said, okay, we'll take some photos for you. And they would literally fly out from SF to New York City and personally take photos of their hosts' homes, and then make it look really pretty and professional.
Sure.
They provided a white glove experience, and that's what we're doing for our data providers too. So we're attacking the supply side. We're obviously leveraging Mark and Jordan's contacts to get as many data providers on board as possible. And we're going to turn to data buyers once we've reached a critical mass of data providers. But the beauty of this market is that we can bridge the gap between now and the point when we have a bunch of data buyers by having the functionality that I just described, which is people can trade data sets and they can add liquidity to data sets, even if you're not a person who's a data buyer, you can still participate in our data market, right? You can still trade things, you can still add liquidity and remove liquidity. So that appeals to our existing audience, which is mostly crypto users. So that's a way of bridging the gap between now and when we have a bunch of data buyers on the platform.
Is there a timeline too that you guys are comfortable sharing, or that you can at least forecast of when you transition from that just sole focus on supply?
I think it's hard to have a accurate timeline of when we think we're going to flip on that switch, because frankly, it's starting to happen organically. We were approached by a pretty decent sized hedge fund that actually, not through Amass Insights, but through tracking BDP, was, really found out how quickly he can, the portfolio manager that was working at this fund, how quickly he could, onboard a new data set.
Yeah.
And he back tested, I think it was Closing Bell or one of the other data sets that we've had an IDO for on our marketplace. But he said this saved him a bunch of time.
You previously said it could take 6 to 18 months. Is that right? From those hedge funds?
Just to acquire a non-contemporaneous data sample for backtesting purposes.
Yeah.
He went in, immediately got a data sample and was like, oh, this is actually compelling. If I can have 3 years of historical data, I could potentially license this, and this can all happen in a matter of days. So that organically happened. And I don't think, just based on the conversations I've had with, institutional funds, they are getting into crypto. There's no doubt about that. And they're starting to get, crypto related data. But in terms of how they acquire that data, it's going to take some time and education on our part. But I can see that happening in the near future. But right now, we're focusing on getting the data supply up as quickly as possible.
That's awesome. So
you talked about right now your whole strategy on how you're going after data providers. When do the data consumers come into play? Who are they, and how are you planning on acquiring them?
Well, yeah, I mean, that kind of goes back to, I guess, your earlier question of when are these institutions going to buy? I think that's organically starting to happen now, but at a very slow pace as we imagined. I think as the retail side, we have to educate them on what alternative data is and what are the specific use cases to this. And the good thing about our marketplace is we're not going to just completely drop a very massive data set that covers thousands and thousands and thousands of tickers. I can if I wanted to, but let's slice that into something that's, I guess, easy to comprehend. So if it's a specific data set that we're scraping, sentiment data from Reddit, around GameStop or AMC, retailers are going to understand that. And so I think the education component, once they kind of slowly understand how they as a day trader can leverage this, like they're going to start acquiring slices of that data, and that's going to be in the near future as well.
Awesome. So throughout this whole thing, if people have been listening or just listening, jumping on now and coming to this one portion, you've been kind of painting a picture, and we've talked about, Peter, yourself, you talked about like there's these food tokens and these meme tokens from Doge to Yam and Shiba Inu, and there's a Rocket. There's a bunch of different coins out there, a bunch of meme currencies that really, in the grand aspect of it, there's no use. Like that's the biggest thing for me. Like I threw $1,000 into Dogecoin last year in the summer, and I sold for $42,000 upon this massive spike. And it's insane. I'm like, how? Like, I should, like, wow. So I'm like, there's no use for it. It got overextended. And the biggest thing is that when it comes to a token, when it comes to an investment, there needs to be some use for it. And throughout this whole thing, you two gentlemen have painted a picture of why this is so useful. And that's where I want to hear from you, like what makes your token overall have value?
Yeah, so our token it plays a critical role in the platform itself. You can't really access the platform without using the token. It's used to pay for data sets, it's used to stake liquidity to data sets, and it's used to trade the data set back and forth. So you really can't access the platform without the token. So it's as integral as it can get. I would say the other thing is that it might seem like it's a lot to ask for an institution or an individual to have to figure out Ethereum wallets and figure out, how to store their private key and stuff like that. That is a technical hurdle that people have to figure out. But that's kind of a light mode compared to the legacy way of acquiring data, which is so drawn out and painful that, this hedge fund guy that we talked to, he said it was like a breath of fresh air to be able to access a data set within minutes rather than months. And he's willing to figure it out. He's willing to, set up a wallet. He's willing to, buy some Ethereum and use BDP because it's just easier. As many steps as that involves, it's actually easier than the normal way.
So to kind of I keep on thinking like this. It's like a ticket. It's like a ticket to ride. It's a ticket to come in and to your center. That's a massive use. And if I was a company, like you just said, like a hedge fund or an overall company that just needs to know, hey, I'm coming for this certain sector. I need data. I have 1,000 coins of BDP. I'm going to use one of them to get this centralized data. Like that's brilliant. Like there's major use for this.
Well, can you guys just speak to how does someone like myself acquire BDP? And I know to date there are some existing hurdles with just buying crypto. Can you just elaborate on what that process looks like?
Yeah, it's fairly, depending on your level of experience, it should be fairly painless. Basically, all you really need is Ethereum. So let's say you're, you have a Coinbase account, you have some Ethereum in there. All you really need to do is to convert from Ethereum to BDP. So it's a click of a few buttons if you're on a decentralized exchange or even a centralized exchange.
Piece of cake.
Yeah, it's not,
it's not really that hard.
Done crypto ever, it's going to be intimidating, but it's fairly straightforward once you've gotten the hang of it.
Yeah, and that comes from the crypto space. Like it took me a matter of minutes. But then again, I had Peter helping me, so.
But in this process too should only get better, right? More easy to obtain crypto inevitably, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of noise out there though. Like going back to your earlier comment about all these meme tokens, like it's easy to get lost in that. And we want to build up that confidence of getting people involved in the crypto market. And that's, our goal is like, we want to show utility. And unfortunately, like the reality is you have people like Elon Musk and some of these major influencers, they'll make a tweet about these altcoins that have absolutely zero value.
Yeah.
I guess our worry is like we're getting lost in these altcoins when in reality we have a lot of value, or we think that we will.
Well, how do you break through that noise? And you know, other than great podcasts like this that will put you guys out there.
It's actually really challenging. I haven't come from the crypto space, right? But like I know like one of our platforms to communicate with our community is Telegram. And then we also have like chat rooms with our Chinese community. I was blown away at some of the things that people come up with. These people are not United States citizens. These are fake LinkedIn accounts. This person never worked on Wall Street. Like they create all this, what we call FUD, in order to drive our price down. And, rightfully so, the crypto market, especially when in 2017, when a lot of these ICOs were, populating from just like, a business plan on a napkin, there wasn't a lot of legitimacy.
Yeah.
And so we're trying to change that way by doing podcasts with you and having weekly or bi-weekly or monthly AMAs with our community, to really show that like, look, there are within this world of altcoins and memes and, there is actually coins that have real value over the long term. So
utility, yeah.
I have to say, like,
it's refreshing too, by the way.
Well, it is refreshing. Like, I think my whole biggest issue with alternative coins and cryptocurrencies is where's the value coming from it? Like, I need to know where's the value. Is it like, yeah, you have a coin, you have a token.
Alex, you don't see the value in all the shit coins out there?
Someone
has to say it. I had to say it.
I get attacked for being real and be like, there's an overextension here. Where's the value for this? Like I get Bitcoin, I get Ethereum, I get all the major ones. There's use for them. You can like yourself, your Ethereum can gain you access to this amount of data. I get that. There's major uses for those blockchains, but these other ones, there's no reason for them to 6,000 like spike 6,000% in a matter of 6 months. There's no reason for it because there's no value for it. This has value, and truthfully, when I first heard about BDP, before I did any deep dives on it, I was a doubter. I didn't know that much about it, but seeing the way that it was constructed, the way that it is valued, and me being a big data guy, and the way that we're in a digital world, data is worth more than gold, more than any kind of rare mineral on Earth. There's huge use for this.
A tremendous opportunity.
Exactly. And there's usage not only for across the whole globe, and every single company that needs this data is going to come to you for this. And it's not only them, but the end line user. We need data. When people are going to college trying to get a thesis and need data, they can come to you instantaneously without having to scour the whole globe.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I think all the examples today is how it pertains to capital markets, whether you're an institution or a retailer, but corporations, government, healthcare, there's a lot of people that can leverage this long term. And I think they're going to be an integral part to the consumer side of this marketplace.
Yeah, I mean, gosh, how do you expect great change in our everyday lives without the data to make better decisions? And so, like you said, governments, healthcare, and then we are going to fact check you on that 95% data or whatever it was, but here there's just so much data out there that it's just untapped, unused. And so for you guys to be able to provide this marketplace, it's really it's remarkable in every regard. All our retail investors now, you're going to switch from Doge and get on BDP.
I'd recommend it. Like, there's no use for Doge. Might as well go someplace that actually is getting used and has actually usage in this real world.
Yeah, you just need to tweet out to Elon Musk, get his attention, right? If there was like a final message that you could, give to our audience and just anyone who's listening to this, what would that message be?
I would say that data is becoming a new asset class. And like I was saying in the beginning, you want to be contrarian. That's what it means to be contrarian, right? It's to be early, it's to identify a trend before everyone's gotten on the train. And if you identify that data is a new asset class, then just it doesn't have to be BDP, right? Think about the best way to capitalize on that, whether it's looking for a job in the data industry, whether it's with your investments. Just think about that as a trend, and think about how you can best capture that trend.
That's great.
To add on to that, and I think that was good. These type of very valuable data sets don't have to be just used by a select group of institutional funds. It's actually democratize data for the masses, not put it on a pedestal, and allow everybody an equal playing field in terms of the access of information that they can get.
I love it. Well, you guys have said it all. I think, Alex and I are very excited that we were able to bring you on the show. You've certainly brought more perspective to, this incredible opportunity. I know our listeners and our viewers are going to really appreciate this experience. So thank you for taking the time to sit down and share this with us. And I think all of us are going to be watching BDP moving forward.
Absolutely. No question.
Thanks for having us. This was fun.
All right,
Thank
guys.
you, gentlemen.
Thank you. Great to be here.